when he talked about putting the winger wide, and now the D, all they look for is the winger wide. Like, I think coaching girls hockey, I think we all can, figure or have an example of something works, then they just default to that all the time, right? And because they want to be, and so in regards to shift length, it's been like, I find biggest challenge for me is for when they need to realize that they have an odd man break, or they need to back check for an odd man chance again, regardless of shift length, right? And so I find that putting an objective, not putting a solid number on that, they totally let themselves off the hook in regards to what the situation is and what's going on.
Yeah.
So there's been times when we said, okay, we want to get, good shift length, everybody can get involved. That happened, and I'm going back a couple of years, but when I was coaching the San Jose team, we had 4 lines. And so, it was, you can imagine we're not 20-minute periods, we're 15-minute periods. And so some kids didn't even get on the ice because some were staying on for a minute and a half. So, we implemented the 30, 45-second rule. Well, we would have odd man rushes, clear cut, odd man rushes, and we would dump the puck in, right?
Yeah.
And they came off and they were saying, well, I thought you wanted me to change at 45 seconds.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and again, I mean, I know you both have experienced this, and to the nth degree, it's how much is it to be able to say, okay, well, there needs to be a bit of a read and react, and I'm not going to let you off the hook by saying, oh, this was 40 seconds or 30 seconds and I changed. And that's the reason why I made a bad decision to not back check or to not go on the offense.
Well, we had that happen, Dom. These ones were taking long shifts.
Yeah.
And the other team had the puck and they're doing a breakout. All 3 forwards came off. So it was a 5-on-2.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to, they missed a shift because of taking long shifts.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing in their brain. And so you can't all come off.
No, I know, but and again, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but as I say, but that's the challenge. And then I will get it constantly. Well, what's our setup on our power play? Is it a 1-3-1? Is it a boxing one? Is it an overload? And I hesitate, because I know as soon as I say it's a 1-3-1, they're going to go to a 1-3-1 position and have zero regard for what's going on the puck. Zero.
Yeah.
And I actually that was learning on the pro side, because I had to boil it down. Now, like, pretty good players that play at the American League, and so, but they were, so, they wanted, and again, we had lots of guys that could play on the power play, so they wanted to do exactly what we were talking about. So again, in my, being a new coach, we had structure on the breakout, routes on the entries. We had sets that we wanted to run within the zone. And I gotta be honest, we were freaking awful. We were terrible. And I couldn't get mad at them, because they would come off and they'd be like, well, I thought we were running this, right? Because again, not being an experienced coach, I figured, like, if I have it mapped out to the nth degree, then, there's no excuse. Well, part of it was recognizing, okay, what are we trying to do in the breakout? Okay, we're beating the first player. What are we trying to do on the entry? We want to have speed with 3 at the line. What do we want to do when we get a lost possession? We want 3 on the puck. What do we want to do when we get it? We want it to switch puck side and get it to the net. And it sounds so simple, but then they started to make plays because there was concepts that they could understand, and concepts that they didn't have to think, okay, where should I be? It was more, I mean, and I guess that's coaching too, right? But yeah, I think trying to articulate that in such a way for the girls to understand that it's not about, yes, it's about shift length, but it's more about being able to read the situation of what's going on, and is, to me, the harder challenge.
Right? Yeah. Well, I think I watched the Flames last night, and they couldn't get over the blue line on their power play.
Yeah.
And I listened to who's the guy that runs it in Edmonton there?
Gulletson.
Yeah, he talked, and he said the big change for him last year was to tell him he wanted them to score on the rush.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just to get in the zone and set up.
Yeah.
And he says his mistake was, like you're saying, he taught it like chess. You're here,
yeah.
you're here, you're here. And as soon as they started trying to score in the rush and then winning the loose puck, you know.
Yeah.
Well, because then things started to work.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I had very similar experience, right? Like that was a aha moment as well, running the power play, because as I say, like it was, you know, I had very good coaches, very, very organized coaches on top of me. And they wanted, you know, things a certain way and mapped out. And the reality is that the game isn't that way. As much as we try to make it that, it isn't. And there has to be, I believe there has to be a structure and a concept in place, but there has to be the flexibility to understand what you're trying to accomplish. And again, like that's, you know, it's a fine line, because there's details within all of that, right? And you know, it's the art of trying to get them to understand the concept and then work within the details, the individual details within that, so they can execute. But it's not easy, because everybody wants to please, right? They want to please your coach. And so if you're telling them that you want them in a certain position on a breakout, they'll be in that position. But it's, I guess, understanding that there has to be a read on it as well. And it never does end, but they want it to, especially with the girls. They want it to be black and white. Like, absolutely want it to be black and white.
Oh yeah, you get them, and in the defensive zone, they'll be standing there waiting for a pass.
Yeah,
they forget to play defense first.
Yeah.
You know, they want to be in the right spot for the pass, and they're standing there. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I've got a go ahead. Well, I've got I'll let you go. I have a pretty interesting little story what happened to us, but I know you were going to say something, Wally. Go ahead. You're muted, Wally.
No, I'm good. I've got nothing. I've got something on my mind, but you guys keep going.
Okay. So we have we have a arrangement with with a club team, and so we borrow players from them, and we've lent them some players from our team. And it was interesting because, you know, every coach's style is a little bit different. And, you know, I had their coach join me on the bench for the Fire Starter when they came down, and they played with us. And he has some really good players. He probably has the three players we have. They're probably D1 players. They've actually, the one has gotten an offer from a D1 school. The other two, the one will get an offer, but she's looking for an Ivy, so she's kind of holding out. She's gotten multiple offers from non-Ivy schools, and then there's a younger one who she's really good. She's probably one of the best in her birth year in California. So we've kind of had this exchange program, if you will, and he came on the bench with me, and so there was an event that I wasn't able to go to, and he was able to, he was able to take the team, and he was able to coach it. And so You know, obviously the dynamic's a little bit different because he knows the girls, but doesn't like know them, you know, personally and whatever else have you. And so, you know, I am really, really hesitant to do video with the girls because I've tried to do individual video with them based on what they're doing, and I find every single time it becomes defensive and it becomes not what I'm looking for them to see at all. So I've had to get a little bit creative. So he's running they're doing an event in out east, and so you know, he has a different, not a bad coaching style, but just a different coaching style in regards to constructive criticism as they come off, you know, as to what they were, you know, doing right and wrong. And so after one of the games, one of the girls says, can we do some video? And so he was like, sure. And he does it quite often with his own group that he has. And so he went and grabbed a you know, room and started to do video with the group. Well, and you know, I had one of my assistants in there as well, and you know, she kind of gave me the play-by-play, and so did he. And you know, they prefaced it all by saying, this is, you know, this isn't personal, this is, you know, this is just to, you know, as an example to show, you know, what we're looking for, this, that, and the rest. So all of a sudden, you know, he had girls storming out of the room. He had girls confronting, being, you know, indignant on the fact, you know, arguing as to what they were trying to do and what not to do. And you know, and again, like I could tell he was you know, afterwards, he's like, hey, did you get any feedback? Because I know it, you know, it was very inflammatory as to what happened. And you know, and then and again, like, as I say, it's just, and again, he's articulate, and I'm sure that he was, you know, wasn't accusatory with anything that he was showing, but you know, some of the quote unquote mistakes that he was showing, you know, the girls can handle it. The girls, and you know, from his team, from our team, and again, I think part of it, his team, one of the girls from his team, I think, stormed out, and I think part of it is, you know, she's new to our group, and she's, you know, probably a little bit embarrassed and whatever else have you. But you know, so you know, I kind of, you know, and then you know, you try to pick up the pieces and you try to figure out a way, because I do believe that there is a way to be able to go about, you know, showing things. So I grabbed them and I said, okay, we're going to do some video. And I grabbed them and I will be honest, it's really the first time that I've showed them group video. I've showed them individual videos before, but the first time I showed them group video. So what I did is I grabbed 5 goals that we scored, and I split them all in groups. And then I said, okay, I want you to tell me what the other team could have done to prevent us from scoring, right? And it so they went around and again, I mean, it wasn't perfect by any means, but I think it got them thinking a little bit in regards to, and what I tried to do is, you know, obviously we were making the same mistakes their team was making, but I tried to show the other team making mistakes and what we were doing. Because one of the things that we really struggle with is that if there's a puck battle in the corner and the defenseman and the forward are engaged within the puck battle, the net front D won't recognize where the third player is, and they'll stand at the front of our net and they won't adjust at all. And so, you know, that was one of the points. And so, yeah, the next game we had, it improved a little bit, but yeah, I just think it's just, you know, and again, like, part of it is the maturity of the girls for sure, because I let them know, I'm like, listen, I would venture to say that if you're going to continue on playing at a high level, you're going to have to deal and understand the constructive criticism within, right? So, you know, I don't know. I don't know what the best solution is. Is it to try to make them exposed to that, so they're desensitized to it, or continue to try to?
Well, Don, I've been through that years ago, and I everything you've talked about, I've been through and dealt with, and now that I'm not coaching, I don't get a chance to try to do it, but I'm trying to convince coaches. The use of video, I was like all of us. Initially, it was our show, and we were describing everything, pointing out everything, and after about 5 minutes, they would shut you off.
Yeah.
But when you point out mistakes, this is the first thing I learned. I was too much video, too much pointing out of what they were doing wrong. It was having little effect. So I actually began to, and I dreamt of this, that if I sent a clip out of a good play where we scored a goal, and I would ask them to, if I was to do it again, I would ask them to describe everything we did well from one zone to the other zone to score that goal. And then they would write their response or talk their response. But I always thought emailing a positive clip of what they did well, and if they left anything out, you could add to it. The next question was exactly what you said. Now, we did it well. What did the other team not do well? What could they have done better? And that's the only way to go with video, because they get pumped up about what they did well, and they learn from the other team's mistakes, which you always make.
Yep.
And one clip, I've never even had a chance to experiment with it. But you might try that as an assignment with your team. Send out the clip and have them write down everything they did well on their own time away, and maybe have a classroom session and look at it again and get pumped up about that clip. But then as a group, do what you did. Look at the other team's mistakes and what did they learn from it. Because in the end, when you talk about them defaulting, they're thinking about what you told them to do. They're not thinking on their own.
Yeah.
And all you want them to do is to begin to make decisions based on what they see, not on what you told them to do. So basically, it gets into the Socrates method of teaching and coaching. No longer prescribing structure and deliberately doing things that you're told, but figuring things out based on questioning. And it engages them, and there's no negativity. So the conflict you had with your guest coach with you, using video that way, to me, it isn't productive. It is for us. Actually, I find I'm guilty of this. I've been guilty of it over the years, for talking too much, telling what I know to the players.
Yeah.
And coaching isn't about telling what you know. Coaching is about discovering what they know and then guiding them to what they don't know, and not learning from you directly, but just learning by thinking through the process. So you mentioned a few years ago with the American League team on power play. And I wonder if you could talk about that story where at the end of the year, you did the exercise of putting them in units and then coming back. Do you recall that story?
Yeah, no, I do. It wasn't a power play. It was a 5-on-5. But yeah, no, we had taken, or the head coach had taken the clips and had divided the team up into 3 or 4 groups, and everybody had a separate a separate computer, and the only job the coach had was just to facilitate the video and to be able to run it forward and back, and then just had the players amongst themselves discuss as to what they saw and what what we were trying to demonstrate, and the good and the bad within the clip. And it was, yeah, I mean, that's obviously shaped, my idea of video, of showing, because, the feedback that we received in the exit meetings was that was the most memorable video session that we had over the year, and that there was the most benefit within it, and that players, or at least this player in particular, was the only thing that they were hoping for when watching video in a group, was that they wouldn't be on it, right, to making a mistake type of thing. So yeah.
Well, that's the gist of it. We years ago, it was yelling and telling them what to do and getting angry with what they didn't do in the old school day. And we're trying to get coaches. The problem isn't players, it's us.
Yeah.
To go from yelling and then telling, which is all we do at minor hockey, to asking. And really, the art of communication and coaching is going to be coaches to get out of the habit of telling and experimenting with asking and listening. Because until you do that, you have no idea what they think, what they understand, and what you might need to guide them with. So in the same regard, the routine between periods that I prescribe now when I'm having coaches complete their high performance evaluation, I have them follow this when I come to the ice sessions between periods. It's a routine. And on the bench, after the period, the players go in, the coaches talk about what happened. I ask them, what do you usually do? And they usually talk about what happened, what they have to do better. And they usually go in the room and tell them. But I said, this time, 2 questions. You ask each other, what did we do well? So you get into a positive frame of mind, regardless of how the period went. And then what do we need to do better? And the head coach listens to everybody, filters all the information, and you go into the room and ask the players the same 2 questions, listen to their answers, and then say what needs to be said as a head coach. That to me is common sense to education today and coaching communication today. And I'll tell you what, coaches are getting there. They're starting to ask more questions. So I'm just trying to encourage each coach, if you have 4 on a team, make sure you ask the player 1 question. Each player gets asked a question, but you ask 1 to a player and listen to the response. It might be the drill. It might be something that happened in the game as soon as it happened, and listen and see if they understand what happened, what they might have done differently, that kind of thing. So it's I'm glad you got to talk about that, because it's something I wanted to edit and get out there for coaches, is start asking questions. We have this knowledge. We tell them all the things we want. And, it gets down to, I like your word default. You tell them what to do, and they'll remember what you told them, and they'll default to what you told them, and not flexibly make decisions within the structure you want them to. And in power play, as you talked about before, Daniel Goyette asked me to run a practice for her because she was away for an induction in Quebec. She wanted me to run a special teams practice because her team was struggling. And I did what I would have written in the national women's curriculum. I worked on the tactical power play skills in small groups. I did a small drill, 3 versus 1 umbrella, live drill to utilize those tactical skills. And then we went into the zone and did 5 against 4, but I held my hand up, and if I had a open hand, the defensive players were passive. That was the way they played, and the power play had to do what was best when they were passive. Or I held it up and opened my hand and clenched my fist, continually, which meant semi-active. And then when I clenched my fist, it had to be full press. So they learned to react to passivity and get the puck up high and get it through seams to the net. Semi-active, that's what your power play is. You might do the give and go or the L, the short long pass or whatever, semi-active. But when they do a full press, that's when you need real quick puck movement, short passes, long passes, and maybe spread out and get them caught by being aggressive. So I just wanted to share that. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, absolutely, Wally. I know, like my last year there in with the Flames farm team there, it was during COVID. We would go into the room and, because everybody was separated, right? You weren't able to put everybody in one dressing room. So we would split coaches and we would go, into one room and, we would ask, what we needed to do better, and we would come back, report back to, to the head. But, I don't know that we kind of, wasn't the one piece you talked about in regards to, starting with what we did positive, to get in the right frame of mind. I like that. I think that's super beneficial. And then ultimately having the coach kind of summarize and, at the end, because I think that's an important piece too, that, I don't know that we actually did that. I think that was more due to the fact of COVID and not being able to get everybody into the same room at once. But I do think that ultimately the coach does need to make a quote unquote decision as to what we're going to do as a team moving forward. But obviously everybody having had their input on everything is super beneficial. I mean, that's the buy-in, right? It goes back into the buy-in, I think, that, everybody craves.
The buy-in, I use the word engaged. You've actually asked them.
Yeah.
They're thinking, they're processing what the question was and making the answer, coming up with the answer based on what they've seen and think. Now, you don't know that in a game. What are they thinking? Why are they doing that? Once you tap into that reservoir of their thinking process and how fast it is, I think coaches would be amazed at how much they, or if they're not thinking, how much they're going to begin to learn to think because you've asked them questions and are getting them to think.
Mm-hmm.
But in the past, we've only told them what to do. We've developed robots and players of habit. And I know years ago, talking about that default, you remember when I think Vancouver was one of the first teams to start man-on-man D-zone cover. And the story was a player, they got scored on, a player came off the ice and the coach went to talk to him and, tell him he didn't do his job. He says, but I had my man. he didn't switch. They were just playing man on man and got scored on. So, to that effect, my thinking is D-zone cover is man on man when it should be, and man zone when it should be. And it's the same as the power play. It should be an umbrella when it should be. It should be a spread when they are doing a full press. And I think players can figure that out. I don't know that we've figured out how to allow them to figure it out in a simple way. There's a structure to it, but not enough that paralyzes them into what they've been told. And I think that's the difference between players today that are great. There's more of them today that are intuitive, solving problems of their own on the ice, thinking together. And actually, when I watch the NHL game today, I think the best teams, players do that the best. They think on their feet, they have excellent skill sets, and they're executing the tactical strategies, whether it's special teams, forecheck, breakout, you name it. There is a prescription about how to break out. And back in the day, I remember a story about Lidstrom being asked, well, what's the breakout? What's your breakout? And he just said, it's the situation you're in. Whatever the situation is, you have to figure out what to do. So right now I'm working with a U13 team whose coach with college playing experience has focused on wheeling, carrying the puck behind the net, telegraphing the breakout pass to the winger on the other side where they've overloaded and they can't get the puck out. He hasn't gone into evasive tight turns and gaining time and space to hit the winger, continuing his skate to hit the center. He hasn't worked on D to D. His methodology is wheel. Just keep going behind the net, build up speed, and it's not working. So my role now is trying to mentor and get him to work on the different nuances of breakout, appreciating whatever the game situation is, you'll figure out what to do. You might reverse it in the corner. You might bank reverse it at the net. You might do double D to D. But one of the things I do on the bench with the girls, I go on the bench and just handle the gate. And I like doing the defenseman's gate because I can talk to them. When I'm talking to them, the first thing we were talking about shift length, and we're looking at the game, and there's two girls close to me, and I point out now, here's an opportunity to change. We're at about 35 seconds, and they decided to stay on rather than come off. And I explained that if they get back in our zone, we could be in our zone for a long time. They might have changed. In other words, the players watching are watching the players on the ice that have to make that decision to change given the situation. And that helped. So my role helping the coaches is just doing a gate, talking to the players like that, and then telling the players, to the coaches, what I'm doing. You know, I'm going to try to get shift length, conscious decision making about shift length, a part of their of the way they make decisions and what they do to stay within, that 30 to 1 minute time period and change at the right time. So I think it's a process, and I think over time, new generations of coaches will continue to take it and take it further. And the questioning thing to me is the coaches who ask the best questions and are the best listeners, which I was not and still am not, they're the ones that are going to have some success. So, to what degree have you found that at your level, Dominic? Are you still caught up in the telling mode, or have you been able to discuss or question and listen to them?
Yeah, and again, depending on which team it is, it's obviously coaching the boys and coaching the girls. It's it's a one actually helps to coach the other in a way.
Yeah.
At times, the tact in which I take in regards to the girls is little more inquisitive, and but there's times that I find to be able to to be able to be a little more directive. Again, like it's not conscious on my part. I think it's just going back and forth from the boys to the girls, but I recognize and realize fairly quickly when I'm not asking enough on the girl side, and so and vice versa, as well. I don't, and again, like I think, I noticed it on the pro side, there has to be the questioning, and there has to be the everything from that side. I just think that, and I've got some players from Eastern Canada, I've got some from Alberta, and I think they've been directed a lot in their career, and maybe haven't been exposed to being asked the why a lot of times. So I can see the surprise in their face a little bit when I start asking why they're doing things. But yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'll get get dictator, a little bit of a dictatorship at times in regards to certain things, and realize and recognize right away that why there's not more there's not more intuitive play is part of it is because I haven't let them, in a way, right? So.
Yeah. In that regard, Tom, I'm going to give you an example. Mentoring, I go spend times with coaches where I do go on in the dressing room, listen to them before the game. I watch them, they're together with them in the hallway, and before, in the pregame, I listen to them talk and ask questions, and they listen. And on the bench, I listen, and I'm looking at how they communicate. And this one coach has mastered his team. When I went in the room before the game and between periods, he asked questions, and a lot of coaches now that I'm working with, they do ask questions, but it's because I suggested they should. And the players who were answering were not really answering what they thought, but what does the coach want to hear? And it was prescribed. But in his case, when he asked a question, the players were on the edges of their seats, sharing their ideas. So somehow the barrier of, he's asked me a question, what's the right answer? As opposed to really letting them freely think and express themselves. That takes time. And this is a young coach who does that naturally. It's quite remarkable. I'm pretty impressed with it. And I'm not in any high-level dressing rooms anymore, but I'm really curious about, it's all about how do you get the most out of your players, and how do you communicate with them to involve them, engage them, inspire them to be better than they were. And it's a long-term process, but something we can all get better at. That's for sure. Tom, are you still with us, or you're planning your practice for tonight?
No, I'm still with you, and I'm planning my well, I finished planning it. So we have a 90-minute one tonight, which is unusual.
How long are your practices, Dom?
Oh, hour 15, roughly. Sometimes there'll be a 2-hour practice if the girls are if the girls have been traveling and they come back, or the boys have been traveling and they come back and they're not practicing that day, then the one team will have a 2-hour ice session.
Yeah.
So
what's ideal, Tom and Dom, for you?
Well, for me, if I'm teaching, team play stuff, I really like the 90 minutes. But just a real quick, I want everybody to move quick and all that. An hour is okay. And 75 is kind of in between the two. I don't know. What do you think, Dom?
Yeah, that's a good question, I guess. Yeah, if there's like a lot of teaching involved, yeah, obviously it, the extra 15 minutes definitely helps. But yeah, I mean, I can, at about an hour, I got to be honest, at about an hour, I'm able to get in what I, need to get in. I think, being able to get, most of the elements in, and to have, typically I'll have a couple different games that have a, concept that I'm trying to get across. And if we're working on power play, if we're working on power play, or the power clip, because we work on the PK at the same time as the power play, to try to have a little bit of competition there. And so it's it ends up helping both a little bit. But yeah, I would say, I guess just out of necessity, we've only really had an hour, so I try to make it the best of what we have. But
yeah, we get 2 a week too, so
yeah, we're 5 days a week.
So. Yeah, so like you're more like I was at college.
Yeah,
and I work on one playing role each practice, because we always got 4. Yeah. That would be my emphasis, kind of, doing everything, but also that would be the kind of emphasis of the practice.
Yeah.
One of the things that I learned from Thomas Piccina, and he called it focus, extreme focus. When you practice and you're doing a drill, which is sort of deliberate, and it's structure, and they're working on patterns and passing, and there's no real thinking. And then when you get into applying tactical skills, they just tend to not execute in a game-like way. They're just putting in time and doing the drill. And so what Thomas has done, he brings them to the bench. And I always think, and I've never done this, but I would dare to experiment with it today. If I've got 6 drills or 5 drills, I'm going to scratch one and take a break during one of the other drills to have them sit down and talk about what we're doing the drill for, what is the purpose, and then visualizing themselves executing and coming out and doing the drill or the game. So, Tom, when I watched the global small area games ice times, I thought they were brilliant. Every station, every game that they played with constraints and varieties of rules was competitive. The players were locked in, just going 100%, 110% competing. And I felt one thing I've mentioned to the instructors after was outstanding, because they're not going to get any worse when they're competing with one another. But I suggested it's exhausting to have nothing but competitive stations where you're battling decision making. And I said, take some time at your station to ask questions about what they're doing and what they're thinking, and then go back to the game. I think that's something that we haven't done as well as we could, but you might experiment with it, you guys. You're coaching, you got 90 minutes, Tom, tonight, and you've got all these things you know you want to cover in preparation for the game. But whatever you do, you want to make sure they execute it, and they're thinking and they're focused on what they're doing, sharp at a practice. So, and Tom, you did have a 90-minute practice last week that was one of the best I've ever seen. I think we've talked about it. And it's hard. And sometimes they do that and don't play well. And I've seen teams have bad practices, chaotic practices, which are okay, and they've played well. So it's sort of unpredictable what gets you the results, but you just keep experimenting. That's what you do when you coach. You try a different way, come up with a different idea. Don't do things the same way all the time and expect better results. If it ain't working, change it. If it's not, if it's working, don't break it. Just keep it going. So it's fun. I'm sure. Wish I was about 40 years younger and starting the game.
Yeah, it's always a challenge to when you have to make we're going to try some different things today, and we'll see how it works, because we're playing the best team in the league on Sunday, because they beat Airdrie twice in a tournament 2 weeks ago.
Who's that, Tom?
It's a team around Okotoks, that whole area.
Yeah.
So they get players from there. So right now it looks like them, and Airdrie's the same kind of a thing. And Airdrie got the best player from Calgary, but I think her mother lives in Airdrie or something. She was in the Fire last year. She's quite the player. But they're both big, strong, full of farm girls.
Yeah.
And they can kind of intimidate. We got a little team, kind of intimidate the team. So we're going to throw a few new things at them and this kind of stuff. And they beat us 3-2 last time. They got a 3-0 lead. Then we made a change on our breakout, and we kind of played them the last half of the game. We lost 3-2, but we could have easily won that game. So we're there as far as speed and skill go, for sure.
I'm watching these games. There's 3 U15 teams, and I'm working with all of them. So I'm cheering for all of them, Dominic. And I've told them I'm hoping our 3 teams finish 1, 2, 3 in the league. And there's so much internal competition. Like Tom plays a team on Saturday. There's 3 teams, but he's playing a Calgary team on Saturday, which is going to be highly competitive. And then he's got there are 2 teams, Okotoks and Airdrie, that they look a cut above the Calgary teams in terms of size, strength, power, and individual skill. But our teams can beat them if they play the right way. But you've been in that situation where you've beaten teams that are better, maybe better individually, but you have to figure out a way to compete and beat them. So, Tom, when you're playing Airdrie or Okotoks, what's your game plan?
Well, that game against Okotoks, the first time we started, the wide wing slash and stretching to get them out because they're pinching so hard.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of the only thing the girls are trying to do, and we're throwing the puck up the middle and giving it away, and they're not slashing in front of the D. They're stretching, so they're not really a support for a breakout. you can do that long one, as Dom says, in the situation. If your D's up and not pressured and they got time. So we're going to work on getting them slashing across in front of the D.
Yeah.
For if we're under pressure. And we're going to change. We're going to try a different forecheck. That I like to have 2 different forechecks, and we're going to do that and see how that works, because we're playing on the big ice as well.
Yeah.
So just try a few new things.
So it sounds like they were defaulting to the stretch. So you're practicing them slash.
Well, there wasn't close support, right?
Yeah.
There wasn't close support, and then of course you're throwing it up the middle trying to make that pass, and if they got a high F3, you're almost passing to their F3. Yeah. So we have to fix that up a little bit and shorten our shifts. Our shifts are getting about a minute long, and we want to get them down.
Yeah.
Just those kind of things. I think what happens when you're winning so much, you start to think you're just going to win, and you don't have to outwork the other team.
Well, I think just to me, and I'm sitting back from watching, is are they playing the game you want them to play, or are they playing the game they figure out on the ice?
Well, I think a lot of them have defaulted to the way they used to play. Like a big problem is we pinch and we had no F3 and we're giving up outnumbered situations.
Yeah.
And, just it looked like a different team last weekend. Yeah. At some time. So I'm trying to get back to working like we did, shortening our shifts, but trying a few new things.
No, you're right. I thought about shift length being a possible difference in terms of their focus and their shortness and their energy. But there's a situation happening at the U13 level that is really concerning, and it regards body checking. Now, Dom and Tom, we've had some player suspensions. At the U13 level, there have been some injuries, concussions, because their officials are not calling body checking. And during the game, they're not vicious hits, but they are body checks. It should be penalties. And during the game escalates to be more aggressive, and suspensions have occurred late in the game because of over dangerous body checking. So right now I spent the entire week, because of the suspensions, trying to get officials to be more aware of body checking and suggesting they on the ice give a warning when there is a body check, but not a penalty, and telling the player it's stick on puck. It could be a penalty the next time. But at the same time, telling coaches, teach stick on puck. We've got a lot of male coaches. They're saying take the body. I'm not saying they're saying it. It's just that the idea of checking is taking the body, which to me is totally a misconception. Stick on puck with great body position to protect it when you get it is what it's all about. And the way the game's gone, players getting suspended, coaches yelling at each other on one another's bench, parents overreacting after the game because one team lost, one team won. I'm in the middle of that, trying to keep the peace so that we all stay focused for the safety of the girls and playing the game the way it should be played. So it's a lot of fun, but it's a challenge. Is body checking something that you see as a problem, Tom or Dom, at your game at times?
Well, I mean, the issue that we have is that is that we'll in California where we're playing, there'll be, somebody will be going for a puck, and there's body, contact, and one person will fall down, and it's automatically a penalty, with no context as to, why, like why the person fall down. They fall down just because, they're not, they didn't have good body position, and they didn't brace themselves, and so that is the challenge, because now we'll go any of these events, whether it's the CSSHL up in Western Canada, or you're in Toronto or Buffalo, and the standard and the expectation is just different, and so but it's part of it is it's concerning, because the local, and good, it's good that we travel to other places, but it is frustrating in California here, is because if someone falls, it's a penalty. Like, I'll give you an example. There was a girl she was coming through our defensive zone, and she was just, she was skating backwards, not watching where she was at. She was kind of building speed, and happened to run into another girl and fell down, and the other girl got a penalty. And again, it's like, there's just not enough expertise, maybe. I don't know if that's the right, I don't want to overplay it, but it definitely seems to be inexperience of the officials to not understand what body contact or body checking is, the difference between the two, right? And so it's confusing for the girls. It's very, very confusing for the girls, and I find myself a lot saying that's not a penalty. So because it's in a way, it's tough enough as it is to get them to be responsible around the wall, but it's up to the girl that's getting checked as well to defend and to place herself in a position where she's just not thinking, oh, this girl's not going to check me, right? Yeah. Like they have to recognize when they're in positions, and being able to figure that out, and that to me is the bigger challenge.
Well, part of the coach education programs, particularly checking, they go through phases: contact confidence, stability on skates, being able to brace yourself, keep your arm on the wall and absorb contact, and gaining position, but lowering your center of gravity, spreading your base.
Yeah.
Things are fundamentally a part of contact confidence, and learning them, and being ready for body checking, which there isn't. So if the degree of force knocks you down and puts you in a dangerous situation, there's a line of judgment here where I say the referee has to look at the degree of force and the intention of the check. And in the case of this last suspension, it was definitely too aggressive a hit. The girl wasn't ready. Probably went down faster than she should have. But the degree of force that I observed caused the referees to award a 5-minute penalty, resulting in the last 10 minutes of the game, a 2-game suspension. The team was 1 goal up, and she took that penalty. And I think the lesson here is respect that stage of the game, trying to make a statement on physicality when you're up a goal and taking a risk. And I've had these conversations with the father and the coaching staffs of both teams, because they're both in our association, about reading the time on the clock and the degree of force and possession of the puck. So respect is so important. The safety of the players is so important. But having gone through 2 suspensions, I think the mindset of the players is to compete or be overly aggressive versus really maintaining position. And Tom, with your team being small and fast, low center of gravity, and they have to play that way.
Well, that game against Airdrie, like they got two girls that are like 5'11".
Yeah.
And Tess got a penalty. She absolutely perfect. She in front, good angles, took the hands, cut the girl off. Girl fell down, and like Dom says, we get a penalty.
Yeah.
And then like 1 minute later, their girl just hammers our girl, like a full-on body check and no penalty. So I thought that if you know what the rules are, it's a lot easier to play, right?
Yeah, you're right. That's the dilemma. And
if some team is way bigger and they allow them to be really, aggressive, that's certainly to their advantage.
Yeah. Well, right now that's a big issue up here. I know I talked to one of the coaches of the team Tom's playing this weekend, and she said there weren't suspensions in her last game, but there was an awful lot of body checking. I watched 2 periods of that game. I didn't think the body check, there was body check in that game compared to what I watched 2 days before with the U13 team. But there is that physicality that goes on where they do make contact. I didn't see
Well, there's contact, but there's not hitting.
Yeah.
You can't hit and then get the puck. You can be contact playing it.
I guess the point is it's a joint responsibility of the coaches and the referees to have a common ground about what is best, what is where's the line. And I find that in making that decision, 2 factors, the degree of force and the intention, is what I think would help them get on the same page of agreeing on what could be called. And it's never going to be perfect, but we certainly don't want to have dangerous hits. It's almost like the game has gone full circle and forgotten about the respect in sport, the respect crests on the back of the jerseys in Canada and the stop signs on the back of the jerseys in Canada. Because that was an era that insurance rates were going up because of hitting from behind. And that's when they started it. And that's when they began to create checking clinics to teach the pyramid of skating and contact confidence, and then contact and body checking. And in no place is there hitting in there. And hitting to me means the purpose and the intention of the body check exceeds what it needs to be. So I'm glad I got the chance to talk about that because I'm living it right now. It's probably in our association, Tom, at the U13 level, the thing that can absolutely destroy the cohesiveness of our association because the teams are playing each other and trying to work together, competing, respecting each other. But the score clock and the intensity of the game, the emotions get carried away and we begin to behave like we don't want to behave and teach our kids things that aren't really going to be healthy moving forward.
Fellas, I gotta jump off. I've got this Thanksgiving feast to help out with. Although I gotta say I'm not doing much of the cooking myself. But
happy Thanksgiving, Dom.
Yeah, it's not my Thanksgiving.
Thanks for taking the call, Dom. We never had a guest planned. Al Andrews was going to come on, but he's still recovering from his trip out to Calgary. He had to have some teeth work done that infected. So hopefully we're going to get him on next week. And the plan is I want him to talk about players that like McKinnon and Crosby that went to his program. And he has a couple of young prodigies that we watched in a tournament here in Calgary last week who are very special. And I wanted him to talk about what separates those players when they were kids
Yeah.
and their families? What was the difference that he noticed in their habits, in their character, and their work ethic, not just their talent, but finding
Yeah.
out the intangible qualities that seem to have been ingrained in them as children to be, so responsible and accountable on the ice. So hopefully we can get him on, because I'm sure the stories that he has to tell, and he did mention his actual favorite player in his program was Brad Marchand.
Oh, okay. Huh.
So
Wow.
that'll be a good talk, because the one thing he did in his school when they were children, he had a skating program teaching fundamental skating skills, and you would have to go from a bronze to a silver to a gold standard, and very few people achieved the gold standard at the
Wow.
age of, it was sort of by the age of 12.
Yeah.
You had to adhere to it. They would become demonstrators at hockey school.
Yeah.
And all of those names that we've mentioned do that. They do the demonstration on the ice of those tactical skills while the instructors are teaching them. So, got to take advantage of us old guys before we aren't around anymore. So,
Yeah.
Don,
Yeah, for
have a
sure.
great Thanksgiving, and really thank you very much for the call.
Oh, no problem. It's a pleasure as
Okay.
always. We'll
Take
see you
care.
guys soon. Okay. Yeah.
Hey, Don. Yeah, what we're doing, Wally, is Jim wanted, he wants to do a rotation. So we're having 2 power play units, and the other ones kill penalties.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it for a month. And then the ones that are on power play units now will rotate in. And so they all get to do it. But he just said it's just so hard to practice it you got to have 4 groups practice, and we don't have time where he can focus. So he had each group for 10 minutes on Tuesday. And we'll do it that way so that everybody gets it, but not all at the same time.
Yeah.
And the other ones can get good at the penalty killing, and then vice versa.
So will they both be
Hmm?
playing power play and penalty killing, or are you creating at
Well,
this
there's penalty
point,
killers.
you're creating 10 power play people and 10 penalty killers?
Yeah, well, 7 penalty killers.
Yeah. Well, you know,
Well,
I
like some of the power play
feel
ones
about
will end
that.
up on the penalty kill,
Yeah.
right? But the penalty kill players will go out like first, and then we can rotate that later. And then when come in the playoffs, we'll know who's best at best.
Yeah.
Best
Well,
at
I would prefer, from my point of view and in my role, that you didn't do that until after Christmas. But the heat's on the score clock. I can see
Well,
why.
we've had them for, they've played 20 games with the tournaments and everything. We've
Yeah.
had them for going on September, October, November. So we've had them for almost 3 months now. So
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying my pitch is first half, second half. And right now, the decision you're made, and I know it's probably coming from Jim more than you, it's too soon. I hope you don't lose the spirit of the team in the process. I'll certainly be watching that and feeling the influence of that, because I watch games up top and sit with the parents. And so those kids aren't playing that team now.
yeah, but they're not playing it now. They will be playing at the same opportunity. So the opportunity is exactly the same. It's just that the ability to practice when you only have 2 practices a week,
Yeah.
and actually teach it properly with 4 groups isn't really there. So with the 2 groups, and then there'll be 2 groups, and all those kids will be on it again. So they'll all learn it this year. They'll all get, the same power play opportunity.
Okay.
So it's just at a different time. It's not that they're not getting to play the power play.
If they still get opportunities, if you've got an opportunity and a lead, that's what I'm saying, is that if you're up 2 goals, they can all play each situation.
Well, we'll do that. We'll do that in the, of course, if we're up a bunch of goals, that's a totally different situation.
Yeah.
And, but this way we can teach it properly.
Yeah.
Because it, and the other thing is Jim most of the time can only make 1 practice a week. Like he can't make a 4 o'clock. When you helped me with that U18 team,
yeah,
he couldn't make the 4 o'clock practices on Thursday. You always came and helped.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. It's just,
Yeah.
So we basically have 1 practice a week where Jim is there. So,
yeah,
so that's the reasoning behind it. But they'll all get to work in the power play. They'll all walk out at the end of the year and they'll all have learned our power plays.
Well,
and they'll all have learned our penalty kills as well.
Well, we'll see how it goes. If you're successful in the end, it works. If you just don't want to lose the spirit and belief and transmitting belief in all those players, they're young yet, but they're getting labeled into roles.
Yeah, but they're not.
No.
They're focusing on for a month, and then the next group will focus on for a month.
Or you'll still have the other group get the same degree of focus?
They'll get the same degree of focus in 1 month.
Okay.
These players are going to play like this for 1 month, and then we're going to switch, and everybody not on the power play will be on the power play for 1 month. And then they'll all have had a chance, and then.
Well, are you saying that right now you're going with your 10 power play people, 10 PK, and then next month, which would be January,
we'll do another group. All the ones not on the power play will be on the power play.
Yeah, but next month you're saying that I'm watching games, the PK people, who are your hardest working and not your most skilled, are going to play power play, and the power play people, who are the most skilled, are going to penalty kill in January.
Yeah, generally, but we don't have 20, we have 17. So that means three of them are interchangeable. We'll play both.
I know the numbers. I just think the art of it is massaging that so that they're still believing in themselves and working at 100%.
Now, Jim explained it all to them, how we're going to do it.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, seeing it working, because I'm in the middle of, we only have one coach that's already created the power play units that both play power play and penalty kill, and nobody's complaining. And he won the provincials last year with that philosophy because he was able to motivate them in accepting their roles, which might be not playing power play or penalty kill.
Well, we'll make sure everybody's in, no one's going to sit in the bench. And so there'll be a little interchange in the penalty kill because there's 7 people, right?
Yep. So you'll be able to get your power play people out on the PK for sure, and they'll be good. Now listen,
it'll be, there's that's a lot of the forwards because we're using the 1-3-1. So right now there's only 3D on the power play. And so in a month they'll flip around.
Yeah. Tom, I had a great example of my philosophy when Sean played Roberta and Roberta won. It was about the last 6 minutes of the game. Roberta's winning, and they have a strong player who, I don't know whether she was out more often, but she's certain every time you notice her, so you think she's out more often.
Well, they go with 3 centers, so she's out a lot.
Yeah. And that means, I've addressed the fact that they're not developing everybody because of the amount of ice time. Anyway, in the last minute, they pulled their goalie, and of course they loaded up. And the other team had its fourth line out, killing the penalty. 1-goal lead, about a minute and a half left, and she left them out. Now they didn't score, but then they made a change. The team that was short, holding on to the win, and the first line got out, and of course they survived the pulled goalie and won the game. So I went to the room after the game not to the room. I talked to the coaches after their dressing room talk, and Ben was there, who's a goalie coach. He coaches the U18 team as well. And I said, look, I want to congratulate you for the way you managed that situation at the end of the game, and I'm really happy about it, and I want you to tell me why. And the coaching staff couldn't, but Ben did. I know why. He said, they loaded up and you didn't. And that's win-win coaching. I said it's win-win coaching because if you put your best out and take off these kids and they score and tie, you might lose. You lost the game, but you didn't lose the spirit of the team.
We've been doing that all year.
Yeah. No, I know that. But that was the difference, is trying to convince coaches to play with that in a way that, and you've done that all your life. Like on your bench, the art of nobody feels invaluable. They feel important and a part of the team, and they want and accept the roles they're going to end up getting. So it's just the building of a team. I always say the best team wins, and you guys you know what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to sit back and watch and see what we learn from it and see where it goes. But at most levels of minor hockey, you know that teams go with 2 centers and 3 sets of wingers, or 3 centers and 4 sets of wingers, and they double shift those centers in all special situations. When you add it up, their shifts are too long. They stay out too long. They're undisciplined because they're not accountable to proper shift length and sharing the puck. It's not developing good hockey players and quality people. So,
well, we're going to do another way to use 17 skaters. We're going to we've taught them the torpedo. And with the torpedo, you can use 3 left wingers so that you have 4 sets of 2.
Yeah.
And then 3 sets of 3, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have to have anybody rotating through and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, is that the first time you've done that with this number?
No, I've done it in other groups. I've never done it with this team before, but it works perfect with 17 skaters.
Oh, that sounds great. How do you think it'll work? Well,
I think, we're going to take our line of our real checking line and make them all left wingers.
Yep.
The one that isn't a left shot is Jordan.
Yeah.
But they're all really good checkers.
Yeah.
So they'll get out, every third shift. And we've got 4 sets of 2. The 2 torpedoes, right wing centers.
Yeah.
And I want this. I think it might work better against these teams that have us outgunned.
Yeah.
Because we're getting in trouble with not having an F3.
Yeah.
We want to be aggressive, and it's really aggressive. I used it at Mount Royal 5 years. We won 71% of our games.
Yeah.
And when I went to Salzburg, Pierre was using it.
Yeah.
And I think it's with Scotty Bowman. It's basically the left wing lock.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
almost the same as a left wing lock. And when Calgary went in 86, they used it. Bob Johnson used it.
Now that left winger is the first forward back, right?
No, we don't play it like that. We play in our zone. It's the same. It's usually the center low, but if the first guy back or first player back, they have to finish the play first.
Yes, finish the play and then switch.
And then switch. That's how Willie always did it.
Yeah.
Finish the play and then switch.
Yeah.
So they basically play left wing, and on their side, it's almost the same. Down the left side.
Yeah.
If their first one in, then someone's got to be F3.
Yeah.
And but usually, if the puck is in deep, they hold back. The other team shouldn't be able to rim it to the wing or pass to the wing.
Yeah.
And if they rim that, so if it's on the left side and they rim to the wide winger, well, right D is down on her like crazy.
Oh yeah.
So the left D goes side to side.
Yeah.
The left D plays both sides on the forecheck.
Yeah.
They're always on the strong side.
Yeah.
So
have you walked through it, or are you ready to play it?
We walked through it on Tuesday. We're going to walk through it tonight, and then we're going to have a 5-on-5 where they play the Torpedo, a scrimmage full ice, because I've invited 3, so 2 are coming. Comey and Olivia are coming, but I asked Bob Toner's granddaughter, well, she's got something else, but they didn't let me know till later, so it's too late to get anybody else because 4:00 practice. So one of the girls, they'll be there tonight. They can step into the spot, but I think it's an absolutely perfect spot for Comey. I don't think she can play D at our level right now because she's not strong enough.
Yeah.
But I think she can play left wing just fine and play that position.
No, I agree. I think it's brilliant. A brilliant idea. I'd like to have 2 systems. I think it's a great way to play.
Yeah. If you have a lead and you put in, because it's still really aggressive, but you always have 3 back.
Well, I'm excited about that because to me, it's like the rotation of the way you've run the 2 players in the third slot.
Yeah.
I think it's because they've done that, they can adapt to the Torpedo. I think easier. I think it's really good. I think I'm looking forward to watching. It gives me something to look for to see how it works.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's going to take a few games to get the kinks out, but I think it's good to have more than one forecheck. And I don't like, like most teams will do a 1-2-2 passive trap or whatever.
Yeah.
And force. And I don't like having no pressure.
Yeah.
With a lead, they'll go passive. And I don't like going passive.
Yeah.
So that's
the Torpedo is definitely the most aggressive, eh?
Oh, it's a really aggressive way to play.
See, I call it 2-2-1.
Yeah, it is. It's a 2-2-1.
Yeah.
Or the way we go in, it's kind of a 1-3-1 because I want the first 2 forecheckers in an eye, like penalty killing.
Okay.
So that the one's on the puck, and if number 2 reads.
Yeah.
If it's a battle on the boards, we'll go in there. But if they go D to D, they can go right over to the D to D.
Yeah.
I don't want them both going in. So they kind of go in just like a penalty killing eye almost, but way more aggressive.
Well, see, watching the teams play, I don't think anybody goes D to D in that against you.
Well, I think Airdrie did pretty good. You know who played really good against us was that Lethbridge team. They've got really, really good players. Yeah. And I think what happened in the game, it was 1-1 with 10 minutes left, and they were playing really good.
Yeah.
But I don't think they expected to win because they haven't been winning.
Yeah.
And we got to I think a power play goal, and then Lily just caught somebody flat footed, went in, scored on her own.
Yeah.
And then it was funny, like number 9 doesn't score very much.
Yeah.
They had the goalie out, and we have a face-off play, and the center talked to her, I'll put the puck here.
Yeah.
So right on the face-off play, she stepped into the middle and fired it right in the middle of the net. All the way down the ice.
Well, looking at your league, I think other than Airdrie and Okotoks, anybody else can beat anybody else on any given day. Like, it's a coin toss.
Well, even the first game we played against Okotoks, they're all over us the first. And once we started slashing,
yeah,
we outplayed them the second half of the game. I think we hit a goal post, and, stuff like that. So
I'm just saying, in terms of the standings, those two teams, like Airdrie, the team that beat you handily that one game, they had lost to Okotoks.
Yeah, they lost them twice in a tournament.
So they were motivated. So looking at their size, strength, their power, their speed, their individual skills, both teams have an edge on our teams.
Oh, they have more talent because, like 5 on each team or 6 on each team wouldn't have made the teams last year when they had 2 teams, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I say the big challenge is, can you get those bottom third of your team to be competitive? Because, the top 2/3 are, they're there already as far as skill goes.
But, Tom, the game that you lost, your top line, your best line was your fourth line.
Oh, they were. And our worst line was -4. Our top line was -4.
Yeah. And that's where I'm saying the mindset of, well, we've got 3 players that aren't good enough. And that's the danger. Like, nobody wanted Calgary to go to 3 teams. I don't think it would be any different if you had 2 teams. I think these players are good players. Hopefully you can compete with the top 2 teams. And I just like how they're playing. And I think they're developing.
They play well, and they've been good ever since they got put together, because I don't think they have to defer to somebody else.
Yeah.
Because they're all about the same, and they've played really good, and they can all skate.
Yeah.
And that's why we picked them, because they can skate.
Yeah.
And and that's a challenge to get. So you take their skating and their work ethic and improve their skills. So that's what been kind of the goal of the whole thing. Improve everybody's skill, because nobody's a star player.
Yeah. Okay, Tom, we're just about 1 hour 45. It's just about long enough for me. I got to do some editing today. So
yeah,
you take care. I'm going to be at ECTAS watching all the U13s practice. 5.
Right, well, I'll send you the practice plan.
Do you have the torpedo diagrammed in it?
Yeah.
Okay.
$11, $23, $23.